This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for literally any occasion. Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs of your favorite F1 moments. From Ricciardo's McHorsey entrance to Kevin's first pole. From Pierre and Yuki's bromance to Inspector Seb, the moments are endless. Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands, gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you're comfortable wearing anywhere. Right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, polos, and bucket hats using the code Dirty Driving. Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere. It's chaos. It's a different type of Sunday scary. It's your newest obsession. It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dirty Driving. This past weekend was the Monaco Grand Prix. I feel like there's a split between the people who are excited that Monaco happens and those that are like, Monaco can go. Now that it's over, we can rejoice on the fact that Monaco is done and dusted, and we can move on to the rest of the season. The race itself was a dry race that turned into absolute chaos with a late rain shower. A lot of sessions ended early throughout the weekend due to run-ins with the walls, and we had a surprise third place. Let's go ahead and unpack the weekend that was Monaco. We have to start out with our race winner, Max Verstappen, and eventually I'm going to get tired of saying that, but for now, we just have to live with it. So early in the weekend, Max commented on the fact that Red Bull could struggle and that it's not their strongest track. He proved himself absolutely wrong, taking the win and surpassing Vettel's record of 38 wins with Red Bull. In FP1, he complained of bottoming and rear end issues and ended in 6th. Whereas in FP2, he led the session just marginally quicker than the Ferraris. After Friday, he was unhappy with the car's balance and said we will need a bit more performance to stay ahead of Ferrari. Qualies. He took his first Monaco pole after a last-minute, mighty effort to knock Alonso out of the provisional pole spot with a gap of just 84 thousandths of a second. It was an incredible qualies that should go down in the books as one of the best qualies to come out of Monaco. In the race, he was able to make a clean start, which is what he needed, and cross the line almost a half minute ahead of Alonso. Speaking of Fernando, he started the weekend confirming his support of the Honda partnership, explaining that it's the next logical step in their mission to be one of the top teams. In quali, he pushed like an animal, his words, not mine, and took provisional pole before being knocked out of that spot with Max Verstappen. It was his first front row start in Monaco since 2007, and in the race, he pit with a portion of the track wet for mediums. He had to come back to the pits for intermediates due to the track getting wetter and wetter. He had enough energy to keep second, scoring Aston Martin's best result of the season thus far. Absolutely stoked for Fernando. I feel like he just keeps improving and improving race to race as the Aston Martin improves and improves. So we could see something happen before the end of the season. It's happened for Fernando Alonso's teams 2 years in the past where they didn't have the best car starting out the season, but ended with being in the fight for the championship. Our surprise third place goes to Este-Bestie'S. In FP3, he stopped on track due to a mechanical issue, and in quali, he took 4th, splitting the Ferraris. This is his first ever top 4 start for the Alpine team. In the post-race interview, he absolutely rejoiced that Este-Bestie'S is on podium. Yes, he was quoted saying that I guess he approves of the nickname Este-Bestie. This is his 3rd podium in his career, and he also took Driver of the Day. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes improved this weekend. He ended in 4th. He looked really comfortable in the upgraded Mercedes in FP1 and FP2, saying that he had a generally amazing day and really enjoyed driving, which is the first time we've really heard that from Lewis all season. In FP3, he was the fastest in the first sector, but ended up crashing into the barrier at the exit of turn 5. He brought out the red flags and ended the practice session early. In quali, he took 6th, and he kind of changed his mind on what he said the day before. He said it was so tough, this car is a son of a gun. He ultimately overdrove the car, which causes the vehicle to not really do what the driver wants it to do. However, in the race, Mercedes racked up a solid haul of points, with Lewis staying in 4th and George right behind him in 5th. George outqualified Lewis for just the 2nd time this season and also said that he overdrove the car. In the race, he lost out to Ocon and Hamilton with a mistake out of the pit lane early in the race, and then had to take a 5-second penalty thanks to a run-in with Perez after he ran off the track in slippery conditions and then backed up onto the track. He said that one small mistake caused them a podium. Charles Leclerc, his home race, is always very special for him as it's the streets he grew up on. It's his 5th time racing at home as a Formula One driver. And year after year in Monaco, he suffers from what we call the Monaco curse. He has simply had the worst of luck at his home race. Mechanical problems, crashes, and just overall dumb strategy. After Friday, he confirmed that Ferrari are in the fight, hoping to accomplish a hat trick, taking pole in Monaco for the 3rd year in a row. In quali, he received a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Norris as he was on his fast lap through the tunnel. Ferrari ultimately failed to give Charles a heads up that Norris was approaching, so it's more on the team, but as always, the driver really faces the consequences. In the race, he finished in the same place he started, P6. Alpine had a great weekend. Pierre didn't do as well as Ocon, but he managed to take 7th in both the race and in qualies. He was ultimately disappointed in his performance in Q3, but it was his best result since joining Alpine. The other Ferrari, Carlos Sainz, had an interesting weekend. In FP1, he was the fastest, setting the pace ahead of both Alonso and Hamilton. In FP2, he had a promising session, but ended up running into the wall at turn 16, damaging the car and bringing out the red flags. In quali, he landed in 5th, and he has started in either 4th or 5th in 5 of the 6 races we've had this season. Could he be the new Mr. Consistency? In the race, he made contact with Ocon after he dive bombed him, damaging his own front wing, and had a half spin sliding off the track and losing out to his teammate in the double pit stack. He said, "I felt like the pace was there today, but the pit stop too late and too early did not match with his hopes for the weekend." McLaren also had a pretty decent weekend. In FP2, Lando lost out on the first quarter of the session due to the car changes, but took a 5th place run ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez. In quali, he landed in 10th, even after a run-in with Leclerc. With Norris and Piastri finishing in 9th and 10th, the team took home a double points finish, and Piastri took home his 2nd career points finish. Valtteri Bottas had a much better weekend than he has had in the past couple of weeks. Both Bottas and Zhou finished in 11th and 13th. Another spectacular weekend, and I say spectacular in relation to previous weekends, was Nick DeVries' weekend. It started off with him admitting that he's a human and makes mistakes, and that the questioning of his future doesn't come as a surprise to him. Quali gave him his best quali results, securing a P12, and in the race he stayed in P12, his best result of the season, which actually moved him from 20th to 19th in the championship. Zhao Guanyu at one point took provisional pole during Q1, but suffered his third Q1 elimination in the past 4 races. Alex Albon had a tricky Friday. He lost the rear and hit the barrier, causing the session to end with 3 minutes left after the red flag was thrown in FP1. And in FP2, he only had the final 10 minutes to get out there due to the mechanics replacing his gearbox, front wing, rear wing, floor, and front left suspension from his crash in FP1. Yuki Tsunoda had a horrible race after he suffered a brake issue the whole entire time, causing him to tumble down to 15th, especially after his nice qualies where he achieved his second Q3 appearance of the season and his first ever Q3 in Monaco. Sergio Perez, my guy, poor weekend for him. He crashed out of Q1, which brought out the red flag and ultimately sucked all his chances of doing well in the race out of the picture. He started 20th and ended the race 16th. It was a messy race for Nico Hülkenberg, who received a 5-second time penalty for hitting Logan Sargent on lap 1. He ended up not serving the penalty correctly, which resulted in an additional 10-second penalty. Logan Sargent was the final driver to complete the race even after an early puncture. Both Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll retired from the race. Kevin Magnussen was out in the last laps after being the last one to get rid of the slicks and ultimately running into the barriers. Lance Stroll, my guy, I don't know how he's keeping up. Well, he's not keeping up with Alonso. I don't know where he is mentally. I don't know if it's the broken wrist. I don't know what it is. But he DNF'd after an array of incidents. He was caught between Albon and the wall, losing carbon fiber. He banged wheels with Perez. He tagged Magnussen. He lost his front wing at the hairpin before he said, "I'm done," and parked and retired. As he should have. Meaning the winners of the week are Fernando Alonso, moving up to second after taking third. Esteban Ocon and Alpine, great weekend for him. Great weekend for Este-Bestie. And my third winner is McLaren, because both cars in the points doing better and better than they were compared to the beginning of the season. The losers are as follows: Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll, and Yuki Tsunoda. Dealing with a brake issue the whole entire race, he was not pleased with his team. It actually got pretty ugly over the radio. My honorable mention goes out to Mercedes. They are making steps forward in the initial upgrade package that is taking them in a completely new development direction. We could see great things next weekend. Spain is a phenomenal choice to test out new upgrades. In other news, Williams are offering us fans the ability to choose their livery, their one-off special livery, for the Singapore, Japanese, and Qatar Grand Prix. The livery will be in the iconic Gulf colors, aka the dirty driving colors, and the vote is between 4 different designs in a bracket-style showdown. You can vote on the Williams website. I highly suggest you do. It'd be exciting to have yours picked. My personal favorite is the bolder than bold, and then in second place comes the heritage because it's just so classic. One thing that was very, very odd about the weekend in Monaco were the cars flying about after they were craned out of the circuit, which revealed Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari's floor. Wolff joked that Cirque du Soleil must have been in town, continuing to say the car was on the road, you could have put it on a truck, and you're showcasing a car to everyone in the world. Horner said it's the same for everyone, insisting there's no issue with the exposure, but it's rude to look up people's skirts. I get why Toto responded in the way he did. They just upgraded the floor and there it is on display for the world. Christian seems to not be worried at all because Red Bull's dominating, and if people want to copy their floor, I don't think Christian cares that much. In the standings, Aston Martin went into the weekend 122 points behind Red Bull, but 6 points ahead of Mercedes. Red Bull are now 129 points clear of Aston Martin, and Aston Martin is just 1 point ahead of Mercedes. Alonso sits just 12 points behind Perez in the championship, so before we know it, we could see Alonso move into second place. Ocon jumped up 3 positions, landing in 9th for the Drivers' Championship, while Piastri, De Vries, and Russell moved up 1 place, and Lando Norris fell back 2. Every year, as soon as Monaco is over, I feel like we're really getting to the meat and potatoes of the season. We've got Spain, Canada, Austria, and Silverstone on the horizon, and only 2 more weekends, Spain included, until I'm at the circuit in Canada, ready to take on the action in person. However, before we get there, up next is the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona. We will see all of the recent upgrades come into play next weekend with a track that's actually suited for testing them. One that has actually served as a winter testing spot for many years. Will Merc shine with their new package? Will Red Bull remain dominant? And what is to come of Lance Stroll, who has failed to match Alonso's energy? Hopefully these questions are answered in Spain next week, but I hope you guys have a lovely week. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Dirty Driving. Until next time, stay dirty. This podcast is brought to you by Red Racer Books, a children's book series about the marvelous world of motorsports. Looking to get the kiddos in your life interested in Formula One? The series includes the ABCs of Racing, which teaches concepts about racing with Red Racer as your guide. The 34-page book is full of gorgeous illustrations inspired by actual tracks and racing situations around the world. The series also includes the book All About Race Cars, a guide to Formula One race cars. Red Racer is joined by Roxy the Engineer, and they walk you through all the ins and outs of F1. This book is packed with 40 pages of beautiful illustrations teaching STEM facts about F1 cars. Red Racer Books is on a mission to give kids in the US and beyond a global perspective on sportsmanship, diversity, science, and technology. Dirty Driving listeners can get 20% off Red Racer Books' entire series using the code Dirty Driving. Head over to redracerbooks.com to buy the kiddos or the adults in your life their new favorite book.